Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Emmy Ruiz, and I am an incredibly proud Run for Something board member, proud Texan, uh, coming to you live from Austin today. And I will tell you, this panel that we have about unapologetically progressive is so, so important. As many of you tuning in know, we are on the cusp of change in Texas, thanks to the incredible work that so many partners have done. But these candidates that are joining us for this Zoom today are really leading the way. Oftentimes we're talking about, changing the makeup of the Texas House or the Texas Senate or the Texas legislature or local government. But it's not just enough to change power. We have to elect unapologetically progressive leaders to really showcase and create and fight for change for so many of our communities. And that's one of the reasons I'm such a proud Run for Something board member. After the 2016 election, many of us were feeling very lost, unsure of where to go. But Amanda Littman and Ross Morales Rocketto, another Texan, said, we can't do this. We have to keep going. We need people to run for something. And they have really devoted their lives to helping young people, people of color, all across the country in races up and down the ballot, in races that people thought never had a chance. They have spent every last day since 2016 fighting for them, giving them the resources that they need and ensuring that they know that they have somebody in their corner. Just to name a few in Texas, from the 2018 cycle, Queen County Judge from Harris County, Lena Hidalgo, as well as, for example, Gina Ortiz, not Gina, but other really great candidates that are, front and center. And so we're really, really proud of that. And so without further ado, I'll pass it on to Run for Something co-founder and leader Ross Morales Rocketto.
Thanks, Emmy. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for being on. Thank you everyone for being on this. As Emmy mentioned, I am also a fellow Texan. I unfortunately am not coming to you from Texas today. I'm coming to you from my house in Washington, D.C., but I wish I was in Texas. And that's been an overriding feeling that I've had as we've all been stuck in our houses recently. But yeah, I wanted to just introduce myself. I'm one of the co-founders of Run for Something. I want to also thank our national host committee that helped make is helping make these events possible. Everyone who's on, for those who don't know, the mission of Run for Something is to recruit and support young, diverse, progressive folks who are running for state and local office for the first or second time. Also, I'm going to apologize. You might hear my wife in the background. She is a very loud talker, and she's also on a conference call right now. So, since we've we got started, as Emmy mentioned, in 2017, sort of like in the wreckage of that election cycle. If I'm being totally honest, when Amanda and I first started it, we thought this was going to be a side hustle. We thought if we were really lucky that maybe 100 candidates total would be interested between 2017 and 2018. We launched a forum on Inauguration Day and a website. And, in the first, on Inauguration Day, basically in the first week, we had 1,000 people sign up. In the first few months, we had 10,000 people sign up. And as of today, we've had over 60,000 young folks who have raised their hands and said that they're interested in running for office from all 50 states around the country. So it's been really deeply inspiring. It's also been a lot of work. Amanda and I said to each other when we saw all of the people signing up, holy shit, we need to do right by all these folks. And so we set out to build the organization from there. And, since we first started, we've now made over 1,400 endorsements. That number will actually be 1,500 in a day or two. We have over 500 of those coming in 2020. And of those 2020 folks that we've endorsed, 54% are women, 51% are Black, Indigenous, people of color, and 23% are LGBTQIA+. So, we're really working hard also to diversify the pipeline. And, it should go without saying, other than the fact that I'm a proud Texan, Texas has been a really important state for us, since we first got started. You know, in in 2019, we spent a lot of time and energy working with the Texas Democratic Party and partners on the ground to do recruitment work. We spent over $100,000 on digital ads to get people signed up and into the pipeline, both for 2020 races and for future ones. You know, this cycle we've made over 40 endorsements of candidates in the state of Texas, and we've made about 100 total since we got started. And as you know, Emmy mentioned, County Judge Lena Hidalgo is one of the folks that we endorsed in 2018. Judge Monique Diaz in San Antonio, Aaron Zwiener, who's currently in the Texas State Legislature, and many, many more folks. Since the very beginning, we've seen Texas as the largest swing state. You know, like as fellow Texan Cecile Richards often says, Texas isn't a Republican state. It's traditionally been a non-voting state. And in 2018, we saw that flip. We saw people come out in record numbers, and we know that in 2020 we have an opportunity to capitalize on all of the gains and all of the infrastructure and all of the hard work that happened during that 2018 cycle to flip the Texas State House, which for folks who don't know, we only have 9 more seats to flip until Democrats take control. And you know, I think the thing that I try to tell a lot of folks when we talk about Texas is if we flip control of the State House, it completely changes the dynamics in the state forever. You know, it opens up in-state money that's never been available to Democrats before. Democrats become a part of the governing process in a way that hasn't happened in, you know, 2 decades. And it means that Texas will basically, going forward, will be a competitive state, and it's a place that will force Republicans to spend money on. And it's a place that will likely start to win a lot of statewide elections in. So, you know, we're building the bench in the state of Texas right now to both flip these seats and just like to continue to build progressive power for the future. And that's why we have some incredible candidates for you tonight. We have Elizabeth Beck, Lorenzo Sanchez, Akilah, Bacy, and Natali Hurtado, who will be talking to you a little bit about why they're running, their campaigns, and then we'll have an opportunity to open up for some Q&A at the end. So you all are clearly not here to listen to me talk. And so with that, I will introduce our first candidate to speak, Elizabeth Beck. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Hi there, I am Elizabeth Beck, and I am your next state representative for Texas House District 97. House District 97 is where I grew up. It's where I went to elementary, middle, and high school. It's where I raise my children now. And growing up in the district was it's an amazing place, but it wasn't always easy. Both of my parents struggled pretty significantly with addiction, and that played a huge role in my life. But I was so incredibly fortunate because I had an amazing public education accessible to me. And within that public education system, I had many teachers and counselors that looked out for me and made sure that I didn't fall through the cracks. And because of them, I was able to graduate high school, which was in question for me at one point, and join the Army Reserves, where I spent 8.5 years serving as a electronics repair technician, and a year of that deployed in Taji, Iraq. And there's a couple of big takeaways from those 2 very significant parts of my life, and that is empathy matters. You can change the trajectory of someone's life with the smallest ounce of help. Also, leaders lead from the front. If you want to enact change, if you want people to follow you into battle, whether that is your city trash collection isn't working right, or you're trying to flip the state house, you have got to be willing to get out in front and take charge and lead on those issues. And that is exactly what we are doing in this campaign, how we are running this campaign, and how I plan to legislate in Austin. We have got to have leaders that lead from the front and do so with empathy. Texas is hurting right now in a significant way. And that is in large part exasperated by the fact that we have had failed leadership at the state house level for generations, and they have cut our public education funding, and they have blocked access to Medicaid, and they have cut resources to aid people coming up out of poverty, and they have blocked paid sick leave. And all of those policies exasperate a global health pandemic. And we have got to see that change in Texas. And we have got to elect leaders that will ensure that when Texas comes back and we build back stronger, that we do so in a way that every Texan gets to participate in the process. And that is not the person that we have representing us in House District 97. My opponent is a landlord of apartment complexes, and he was recently sued for kicking out tenants in violation of the CARES Act. And that is certainly not leadership, and that is absolutely not empathy. And we have got to have someone in Austin that is willing to look out for those people, not step on their necks when they're down. And that's really what I'm running to do. And I am so excited that I am running and will win and will serve with some of the most amazing people that I've ever met that are on this call with us today. And I cannot wait to get down to Austin and be that change and make that change with them. We are that district that you described that no one thought that could, right? Run for Something was my very first endorsement. When I threw my hat into the ring, I had no idea what to expect. It's a scary proposition, but Run for Something very early on was my first endorsement. I remember being so excited because it felt like, one, I had something to announce, right? Like, oh, this is exciting, but I knew I had people in my corner, right? Like from the very beginning, I had Run for Something in my corner, and they have been so incredibly helpful along the way. And, that is what we need. We need organizations like Run for Something that are willing to be our first endorsement, to give us that boost that we need emotionally to know that we can get out there and do it. And then to give us the resources that we need to actually put our plans into action. And so I am so grateful, not only for the organization, but for everyone that showed up tonight, everyone that has donated and helped build this momentum. Because my race was one of those that was a stretch. And we knew it was a stretch when I entered into it about 1.5 years ago. There was an 8-point gap between the previous Democratic candidate and the incumbent that I'm going to evict on election day. And this race is absolutely primed for a win on November 3rd. We have built an amazing ground game, even though we cannot get out and knock on doors. We are calling everybody that will answer the phone. We are writing them postcards. We are sending them texts. We have adapted, and we have not let this get us down. And when COVID hit, and every candidate across the country, no matter what position they were running for, kind of sat down at their kitchen table or on their couch and put their head in their hands and thought, how am I going to do this? It was Run for Something, sending emails that said, hey, this is going to work. This is how you do this. And they were instrumental in helping us get there and helping us develop that winning ground game to adapt and to get out there and talk to our voters in a way that is new or maybe old in some cases, like old-fashioned phone banking. But bringing us back to those old, campaign methods, tried and true, to help us make sure we're getting out there and talking to people. I am so excited for you to hear from the rest of the folks that will be serving with me in the 87th legislature come January. We will do amazing things for Texas. There is so much work that needs to be done. And I talk so often about being that leader in Austin, but the truth is that I will be one of many because of Run for Something, because of organizations like Run for Something who encourage people to get out there and take that leap. We have such an amazing slate of candidates in Texas. So thank you all so much for coming out, and thank you for being supportive of not just me, but Akilah and Natali and Lorenzo, and for the work that you're doing to really make a lasting impact on the state of Texas.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Really appreciate it. And with that, we will go to our next candidate, Lorenzo Sanchez. Lorenzo, all you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone on this call and everything that Run for Something has been doing for wonderful candidates across our country. My name is Lorenzo Sanchez. I am running for Democratic representative of House District 67. This is a very competitive race in North Texas. It is on the southern edge of Collin County, along the Dallas County borderline. It is a very diverse community, both economically speaking, religiously speaking, ethnically speaking. It's a very diverse area here. So I'm thrilled to be the nominee that's going to be hopefully representing this area down in Austin after November. The reason why I decided to get into this race is because of the sacrifices that Elizabeth was talking about a little bit as well. I had so many teachers that spent so much time with me, making sure that I was getting the knowledge that I was going to need to be successful in my career and to be successful in my education. My mother came to this country as a young girl from Mexico, basically gave me and my sister everything in order for us to have better lives than she had. She raised both of us here within the community that now I'm seeking to represent. And I want to go and be that fighter for my community down in Austin. I consider myself a progressive, especially for Texas. But basically the reason why I accepted that label as well is because I decided that I'm going to be listening to everybody. If there is a problem going on within a certain community, I'm going to speak on those issues. I'm going to speak to that community. I'm not going to shy away. I'm not running to be a representative of my community to hide away from difficult conversations and to hide away from really finding people solutions. I want to go be that leader. I want to go be a leader of service to my community down in Austin. I think our current representative has not been a leader. We know that Texas is the #1 uninsured state out of any other state in our country. We know that our maternal mortality rate is astronomically high, one of the highest in the country, but especially for women of color. We know that we're closing the most rural hospitals in any other state in our country. We know that all of these things are going wrong, and yet they've refused to expand Medicaid because of some arbitrary things that they've, I guess, sold to their constituents that now that they can't reverse on. But that means that $1 billion has been given away to the most neediest of Texans, the people that really, really need that help. It's caused countless amount of suffering in our state, and tons of people have actually died from the lack of health care and the lack of movement from our leaders. So I intend to go down in Austin and be that leader. I kind of got into this race not ever being, I had never thought I would run for something like this in my life. I was really focused on volunteering for school board members, for city council races, for congressional races, to try to help other people get elected. And then I realized that there was something that I could offer. And that was, in college, I really focused on organizing my community and became that community organizer when I attended school at Loyola University, Chicago, back to my birthplace before I was raised here in this district. But that's where I learned how to organize, and I decided that that's what I was going to bring here to Collin County. I was always positive that Democrats were outnumbering Republicans, but they just weren't showing up. And then Beto came along in 2018 and proved it by winning our seat. But, Democrats didn't vote all the way down the ballot. So we didn't, unfortunately, able to have a representative, a Depew, who ran in 2018. So this, like I said, is one of the most competitive races. We had a runoff that we just got out of last month. So right now we're just making sure that we continue to raise the money that we're going to need to mount the campaign that we need to against the incumbent. If Texas has any hope of flipping the House, it needs to be through Collin County and through this seat. Jeff Leach has been rumored to be aiming towards that speakership position here in Texas. So we need to make sure that we do not see a Speaker of the House, Jeff Leach, and actually hopefully retire him this November. But as I started our campaign and we started organizing, a lot of young people started joining our campaign. They started seeing that I was speaking to their issues. They wanted to get passionate about someone. So they decided to start joining in large amounts. We were able to build the largest grassroots organization in the history of our county. Before COVID, we knocked on more doors than any other campaign. That includes congressional races and county-wide races in our county, because we knew that's what was going to be necessary in order to make lasting change here. And that's what is really driving our campaign right now, is the passion of our volunteers that are making sure that we reach out to every single individual we can to spread that message. So I really appreciate everything that Run for Something has done for our campaign. You know, I don't come from money. I've never ran a race before, so having those resources has really been invaluable to me as a candidate, making sure that we can not only be successful in running our campaign, but actually be successful in beating some of these very talented individuals that decided to step up this year to run for this seat. So we were able to clear our runoff and our primary, and we're running a strong campaign all the way till November. So I really do appreciate all the help that Run for Something offered our campaign, and want to encourage everybody out there to get involved any way you can in our campaign and any of these campaigns to make sure that we have good representation down there in Austin, especially when we're starting to recover from COVID. We need to make sure that that recovery plan is in the image of our communities. And thank you so much for having me today. I've been jumping around call to call, so this is amazing, being able to spend it with so many people and seeing so many familiar faces again.
Thanks, Lorenzo. Really appreciate it. All right, up next we have Akilah Bacy. Take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you guys so much. Run for Something for being, like Elizabeth said, our first endorsement out into this entire field and this entire game, this entire campaign. It was really exciting to get. And like Lorenzo, I am fresh off of a runoff. I guess we're not fresh now because we're now gearing up really strongly for November, but I did have a runoff in July. And, you know, one thing is when COVID hit, before COVID in March, we had we came out the primary with 47 votes. And let me tell you, 47% of the votes. And let me tell you, 47% is really exciting on March 3rd. It's not quite as exciting on March 4th. We realized you have to run a whole other race, but we were really, really grateful. And what was really exciting about that, one is, I'll tell you a little bit more, but the number 47 is very special to my district. But also is that we came out, I was the only first-time candidate on the ballot, the youngest candidate, and also the candidate who did not have the most money and was outspent almost 3-1. But what we realized was with the hard work, and then we were able to share our voice with people, that people listened. And not only they listened to what we had to say, but they also felt and knew that we were listening to what they had to say as well. And so what we were able to share with them was my story. And I'll tell you a little bit as we shared, is that I was born in Spring Branch Hospital, which is no longer. And I was later raised, though, in the Northwest Houston area, specifically Natali Hurtado's district, which is my neighboring district as well. And I was raised with my twin brother and my older sister with a single parent, my mother. My mother was an educator, and she is a woman who I rarely saw asleep. I will say she was up before all of us, and she went down to sleep after all of us. But one thing that she told us when my parents separated was, I will ensure that my children have a stable life. And that's what she did. And we were able to have that stable lifestyle, one, through so much of a community and living in a village with our people who just stepped up and helped my mother. And also just being in a place that had great public schools. And so what that led me to be able to do after going to those public schools was I was able to go to my dream college, which was Spelman College, which is a historically Black college for women in Atlanta, Georgia. And it was there at Spelman College that I was taught that you're supposed to use your your privilege in service of others. Well, I looked and I said, well, what privilege do I have? I'm from a single parent home. I'm paying for school with nothing but God's grace, a little bit of faith, and some student loans, right? So what privilege do I truly have here? But what I learned is that I had the privilege of having a mom who created a stable home for me. I had the privilege of a village who was able to stand in the gap where she wasn't able to. And I also had the privilege to be able to go to a school like Spelman that would challenge me to think about more than myself and just my future. That led me to going into law school, where I came on back to Texas and I went up to the Panhandle. I went to Texas Tech School of Law. It was probably the best time I think you could have during the worst 3 years of your life. But it was a great school. And from there, I was really charged even more so to get out in my community and do some work. And so that's when I came back down to Houston. I worked as a prosecutor. And I worked there for 3 years. And I said, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to work on changing the system from the inside out and working to keep our community safe. And I'm proud of the work that I did as a prosecutor. I think we had great prosecutors in place. But what I realized is after my term there, my term, that I could better serve people, I thought, within our community doing defense and discrimination work. That led me to starting my own practice, where I did do primarily defense work. But when I was doing defense work, what I realized is that we were getting great results in our courtroom, of making sure justice was served in our courtroom still, but I was concerned about what is bringing people into our courtrooms. And what it boiled down to were the issues that we saw within our community at large. And so what that led me to do is getting out to our community and working as a teacher, a mentor, and also volunteering for different agencies and like within the human trafficking organization or human trafficking agencies as well. But even in all of that, what I realized was that the people that were able to help were people, one, who knew where to go to find help, and the people who had the luxury of taking off time to go get that help, and that we're not reaching everyone, but we're only working on a case-by-case basis. And what I realized is that it's time for holistic change for Texas, that Texas deserved leadership that listened to them and that ensured them that they were not voiceless, but that their voice mattered and their voice would be counted and their voice would be heard in our leadership at the local level and at the state level. And so that's what pushed me to run for State House. Now, I said the number 47 was really exciting. So this seat, 138, is the seat that we lost by only 1%. The Democrat who ran in 2018, Adam Milicincic, did a great job. And I mean, phenomenal, and we missed flipping the seat by only 47 votes. When we came out, and he immediately endorsed us, and he's been on our team working hard with us. And so we now have an extremely, excited, unified party here, but also a determined, unified party to finish that job that Adam started. So we're just so excited to be endorsed by Run for Something. I'm so excited to be in this seat, and I'm so excited to work to flip our state house with these other amazing candidates. And now I do want to we talk about flip the state house. A lot of people get lost in those words and say, oh, you want to turn Texas blue. But when we talk about turning Texas blue, we're not talking about just turning Texas to a political party. What we're talking about is turning Texas so that we're fighting for a certain set of values and ideas that affect the masses of Texans, the ones that Texans want to see holistically. Because what I've learned is that when you get out there and you talk to people individually and you leave the political buzzwords alone, most of us agree. Most of us want the same things for our family, and we want the same things for ourselves, and we want the same things for our neighbors. And so that's what we're excited about, is fighting for a set of blue values so that we can go in and fight for all of Texas. Thank you guys so much for having me here.
Thanks, Akilah. Really appreciate it. All right, last but not least, we have Natali Hurtado. Natali, take it away.
All right, so I hate to go after these amazing candidates and their amazing stories, but here we are. So my name is Natali Hurtado, running for House District 126. Those unfamiliar with the area, it's Northwest Harris County. Akilah was raised, and if I'm correct, Ross, you also went to Cypher ISD. So it is an area in which I ran in 2018, was told that we had no chance of ever flipping this seat because it has been such a Republican stronghold. And so with very little money in the bank, I decided to go out there, knock on doors, talk to voters, and we managed to make the case. And this is why we're here where we're at in 2020, ready to flip this seat from red to blue. My story is one of which I think is similar to many people, one in which I admittedly was embarrassed of. When I ran in 2018, I don't think I ever told my story. And it's something that I've come to realize that it is a story that many people share. I'm a native Houstonian, native Texan. My parents, I'm a first generation American. My father is originally from Uruguay. My mother's originally from Honduras. My father came here. He was a sailor for many years, decided to make the United States his home and stopped in New York and made his way to Houston. My mother had to seek political asylum because my grandfather worked for the Honduran government and was providing intel to the United States government. And they were overthrown. And so that's how they managed to make their way to the States. They too landed in New York and managed to make their way to Houston. My parents met at a nightclub and have been married for 40 years come December. So happy marriage. Wonderful childhood. I have a great older brother, younger sister. And everything was fine. You know, I was working at the Olive Garden at the age of 16 as a hostess, working while in high school. And then I started attending the University of Houston as a freshman. I met this guy at the Olive Garden, actually. And about 4 months into dating, my parents gave us an ultimatum. It came with a lot of old world thinking and said that we needed to either get married or we needed to break up. And so we opted that, hey, we know love, we know marriage, whatever. And at the age of 19, you really don't, but we did that. And about a year after that, we brought in our daughter to the world, Madison. And at that time, we were both working at the Olive Garden as servers by this point. And I was taking him to work, and Maddie and I heading out to Walmart to go get groceries. And I received a call from a detective to let me know that he had been involved in a crime years prior. And long story short, he got 2 life sentences, and I quickly overnight became a single mother. And so I was put in a position of having, you know, at a crossroad of deciding which path am I going to take? Do I drop out of college so I could support my daughter? Or do I move back in with my parents, continue working at the at the Olive Garden, and then I'll continue going to school? And so I opted to do that. I moved back in with my parents. I remember having to pick up extra shifts at work, taking out more student loans than was required to cover my classes, solely because I wanted to make sure that I was putting Maddie in a daycare that I felt safe and comfortable leaving her at. I, towards the end of my school year, or not my school year, but my college career, I decided to do an internship just to kind of get out of the classroom. And I interned at the city of Houston with former council member Melissa Noriega. And it kind of gave me a taste of helping people with constituent services. So things that are small on the bigger scheme, but so important to individuals, potholes, illegal dumping, things of that nature. And I loved it. And the following semester, there was an opportunity to apply to be a Mickey Leland intern. And what that would require is that if you were selected, you would have to move to DC for a semester. And so I, naively went to the director and I said, well, if I apply for this and I'm accepted, can I bring my daughter with me? And, of course, no, you're not going to move in with your daughter in a dorm room. And so she was like, look, just apply, and whatever happens, happens. And so I went back home, talked to my parents, and once again, super supportive. And they said, you need to apply for this. And if you're accepted, we're going to make it work. And I was one of 4 students selected to represent the University of Houston in DC. And this was the game changer. This was the life changer for me, because I had the honor to intern with Congressman Gene Green. And this is a man that personifies public service. He kept his ear to the ground and to the community, not pushing his own agenda, but pushing the agenda of the community and what their needs and wants were. And so I told him that if I were ever in that position, that is exactly who I would love to be like, emulate. And so came back to Houston, and I graduated with a double major in psychology and political science. And I started working for a state rep as her district director, fell in love with the work once again. And unfortunately, she came in with the Obama wave and she wasn't reelected. And I began working with a consulting firm dealing with management districts, which is just a unique tool to help revitalize communities and areas by supporting small businesses and attracting new businesses. And I've been doing it for 10 years and absolutely love it. And it's a job in which I go to school for, kind of just into it, wasn't really into it at first because the focus was so much on supporting businesses. My heart had always been about helping communities. But then I quickly realized that when you're supporting these businesses, you by default are also supporting those neighborhoods and communities that surround it. And that's the thing that has just kept me so engaged and so, in love and passionate of the work that I do on a daily basis. 2016, so in 2013, I decided to go back to school, got my master's at the University of St. Thomas in public policy and public administration. Decided to get married. Amazing guy, Air Force veteran, has a passion for public service as well in 2015. And we decided to add 2 more girls to our mix. We have Marley and May, Marley being 4, May now 2. And it's our girls that brought us to town. We were like every other family looking for a place that had safe neighborhoods, quality public schools. And so when we moved here, it was a district that I told myself, there is no way in hell you're going to run in that seat because it is so red. And I was fine with that, and then 2016, like everyone else, I'm sure on this call, our hearts dropped. I mean, a sense of despair and depression to have to wake up and realize that our president was Donald Trump of all people. And I decided at that point, I can either be bitter, be sad, be depressed, or I can do something about it. And I think I was maybe 6 months pregnant with May, and I decided I'm going to run for office. And so I threw my hat in the ring. And like I said, it was a tough sell. It was a sell really that no one really wanted to hear because they had seen the numbers. They had seen the history of this district. Either a Democrat would not run, or if a Democrat did run, they would lose by over 20 percentage points. But when you live in the district, you see the change that's happening. You see what's going on. And then you put the numbers, you look at the actual demographics, and you're like, okay, what I'm seeing is actually right. Things have changed. And we're talking about that as now a minority majority district. And so, when I ran in 2018, and I always refer back to it because it's like burned in my memory. I remember sitting for my screening with the Houston Chronicle, and my opponent was there. First time I had met him. And we were asked, would you vote for the expansion? Both of us, our responses were both yes, which made me leave that meeting thinking, okay, he's not that bad of a guy then. I mean, he's maybe one of those kids that you can get along with. And that was that. But then once he gets into office, like so many people do, you're going to have a vote by your name, and your character is going we're going to all see what your character is really about. And so when he had the opportunity to vote for the expansion of Medicaid, he ended up voting against it amongst his peers and felt the pressure and could not hold to his word. In the Chronicle, it said there was not much difference between the two, with the exception of him living long district. And to me, that was clearly BS, okay? And it kind of just lit that flame in me that in 2020, this district needs the right representation in there. They need someone who is willing to fight for the expansion of affordable and accessible healthcare. They need someone who is willing to fight for public education by making sure that we are properly funding it. Not just, I always say this, Democrats and Republicans are both at fault of taking this amazing credit for HB3, which by all means, look, credit is deserved, but at the same time, it wasn't for long-term thinking and long-term planning. And what we need folks that are going to be in office, that are going to be making those tough decisions this next legislative cycle, because we're going to be facing an incredibly strong, big budget shortfall. And so we have to be pragmatic. We have to be willing to work across the aisle. But I think that what is more important is that we do need to flip this house if we want to get any steps closer in making real change in Texas. And flipping the house is going to be the first step. We have redistricting on the table, and we all know what that means. And so this is why I'm running, and I'm honored to be endorsed by Run for Something. It means the world to me. And I am just beyond honored to be running alongside these that are on this panel and that are listening to this call. It is because of y'all that we're able to do what we can. You know, Lorenzo said that he doesn't come for money. I don't come for money, you know, and the only way that we're able to have viable campaign and so by y'all supporting us, by making those calls, by writing those postcards, by donating whatever you can, it legitimizes our campaigns and lets our opponents know that we're not people to be screwed around with here, because we are passionate and we want the change that we know needs to happen in the state. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak, and I just thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, and that was a lovely way to end the remarks. We're going to ask a couple questions. I've got a few here. There's a few in the Q&A, and we'll just go ahead and get started. Whoever wants to jump in on them, like, feel free to jump on in. I think the first thing that, you know, I always want to ask folks who are running for office is, and especially because, you know, 2020 is doing 2020 things. You know, like, what is it about running for office this time around, if this is your first time or if this is your second time this time, that has been the most unexpected for you? Whoever wants to go first, just jump on in.
Well, I think the most unexpected thing for all of us is running in a pandemic. That is pretty, that was something we could not foresee. I don't think anyone could have foresaw that. But aside from that, I think for me, definitely one of the biggest things, one was, I mean, both, I guess they turn out to be good, they go together. But one was just the excitement around our campaign from running. You know, typically state house races are not really big and exciting races. But now we see that they are, literally because of the work of the 12 before us, that people are really primed and excited about the state house. I don't think, I could not have guessed that would have happened. The way that we are receiving support, the enthusiasm that we're able to get. I think people a lot of times have to beg for a lot of the help that we're getting at this point. So that is one of the big things that I think. And for me also, it's running in a runoff in the middle of a pandemic in the summertime. I did not see that. Again, I did not see that happening at all. But I am glad, because it has led us to be able to keep speaking with voters nonstop since we started running, and just keeping that momentum going.
I'm just going to add, how about getting endorsed by President Barack Obama? I mean, is that not absolutely huge? I mean, 2018, I'm like scraping for those endorsements, and then bam, you wake up and you're like, hey, yeah, President Obama's going to endorse you. I'm like, hold up, wait, what? Is this for real? Prank? Who's pranking me? So no, that's a huge for me, and so welcomed. I mean, yes, that's big for me.
You know, I think for me, it has been finding so much humanity around me, in the sense of not the fellow candidates, right, and then the people that come and volunteer for your campaign. I was having a conversation with a friend last night that was a little down about the state of, you know, world affairs, and I said, you know, humanity is there if you just look for it. And I gave so many examples of these amazing people that show up every day for their community. They stand up and they protest in front of, you know, our congressional offices. They make phone calls, they write postcards, and they do that not because they're partisan hacks, but because they truly believe in the change that they're trying to make, whether that's, you know, my message as a candidate, or, you know, a cause that's important to them. And that is not something that that I really kind of anticipated encountering in this, or having that revelation, I guess, you know, is something that was surprising to me. And also the friendships that I've made. I never thought that I would form, you know, bonds with, you know, my fellows in the fight, working to flip this house. And that's been great.
Yeah, to me, it's been just the people that I've met, the business owners, when I speak with them, and really the volunteers. It's just been amazing how many people are writing postcards, making phone calls on my behalf that, you know, maybe I've never even actually spoken with. So I try to get on as many events as possible. But sometimes when I hop on our phone banks, I'm like, oh, all new people, let me introduce myself and thank you for doing that. So I think it's just, you realize that the size of these races, that, you know, a lot of people are just playing their part in order to try to help get me there. And then I have, you know, the huge, awesome responsibility of making sure that I continue to practice what I've been preaching here for over a year now, and make sure I go do a good job on behalf of everyone down there in Austin.
I think a lot of people, you know, like we're in the, as you all have talked about, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. It's really difficult to, you know, like we're not out there on the doors, I think, the way that all of us would like to be. And honestly, like it's been really sad and disappointing. Like literally for the first time, like I'm a field person. I got my start as a field person. Like it's really difficult for me when people are like, "Oh, should we be canvassing?" It's like, no, you probably shouldn't. But you know, I think I'd love to hear. I'm sure you're still hearing from people in your district through other means, and so I'd love to hear just like what are y'all hearing from people on the ground? What are the things that people care about as we get closer to the election? Like what are some of like the biggest issues that you're seeing in your communities right now?
Get started with that one since I went last time. But we've been hearing about a lot of COVID related topics. So education is becoming something really, really big. And, you know, I thought maybe because of HB3 that, you know, people wouldn't be as interested in talking about education, but it's getting really pushed to the forefront right now with a lot of our educators and a lot of our families that are having to make very difficult decisions right now. And then healthcare is another one that is continuing to be a topic. It was in 2018 throughout the United States, and it continues to be a topic because there's a lot of people losing their health insurance, and, you know, their friends and family, and we're only one, you know, disaster away from needing our medical coverage. So it's been rough, and those are the kind of things people are talking about a lot of the times as well, is economic recovery. Since we know we're going to have a really big budget shortfall, what is that recovery going to look like? And I'm hoping that a lot of these fine people on this call right now are going to be a part of making sure that that economic recovery is something that actually is helping our communities rebuild and rebound quicker and better than what they were before. So I'm really looking forward to that.
You know, I think for me and what I hear is people want consistency, they want leadership, and they want some hope, right, in the future. And I think that they don't feel like they're getting that right now, particularly, you know, there's DC's, it's a whole nother issue, but, you know, our Austin leadership is failing us. Our governor likes to interfere with city and county's abilities to, you know, govern themselves when it's convenient, right? But then when he can score political points, then he comes in and tells us what to do. And that whipsaws, it whipsaws our counties, our cities, and our school boards. And, you know, we've seen our school districts playing this game of Frogger with the TEA because the rules keep changing. And every time, you know, that our schools, our cities, our counties think they have a game plan for how they're going to address this pandemic, the goalpost is moved. And it's not just moved farther out. Sometimes it's moved, you know, completely out of the stadium to the left or the right, and they don't know what to do. And that trickles down to the people in the district. And I think what I am hearing a cry for is to know that there are people that are listening to the science and that are making the best possible decisions for people, not for partisan politics. And, you know, I think it's a big reason why I wanted to run. So, you know, I don't want to say the pandemic helped, because it certainly did not, but it brought those issues to light, like how important it is to have strong, consistent leadership, and what happens when we don't have that.
I'll just add what they both said is very reflective of what I've been hearing in the district as well. But, just to add one more thing to it, here we have Hurricane Laura about to hit us come Wednesday night is what we're looking at. And we're in a district in which, and Houston as a whole, I would argue, or maybe Harris County as a whole, I would argue, is that, Harvey hit us bad. And in my own neighborhood, we were about a mile away from being flooded in as well, our home. And thankfully, our home was high enough that it didn't get flooded. And so flood mitigation is a top issue in this district. And my opponent will say left and right that he's fighting for it. But this is a man who just talks the talk. And to me, it's reflected in his lack of building relationships, even at the county level, trying to reach across the aisle. I mean, he has his two friends, Eagle and Steve Raddick, and that's about as far as his relationship goes. When it comes to our county judge, he takes the opportunity, during this pandemic, when she was trying to make face masks mandatory before Governor Abbott, decided to make it his thing, he said it was overreach. And it's like, this is absurd, so here we are needing you to fight on our behalf to get the proper funding for flood mitigation projects, and you're fighting with the very people that we should be working with. So that is definitely one of the top issues, alongside public education, alongside access to healthcare, that hit us hard. And speaking to what Lorenzo was saying about losing so many jobs, losing so many businesses in this area. And this was even before the pandemic hit. So it's been exacerbated because of this pandemic. But that's what we're hearing in this district, and things that I know that I'm fit and ready to help solve this next cycle.
So I totally agree with my neighbor, Natali, in this. And that is that one of the biggest issues that we see here on the anniversary of Hurricane Harvey is an issue and concern about flooding in our district. House District 138 was a district that was hit extremely bad by Harvey, or the consequences of the government that they made during Harvey by choosing to open up the reservoirs and bring that water into House District 138. Fortunately, during that time, I did not flood, but we were barricaded in for a couple of weeks. But one thing we realized, though, which is so important, is that when I was able to get out and go into the neighborhood, and specifically the Bear Creek area, is that when we're looking and talking and helping people, what we realized is that the water didn't hit Republican homes, it didn't hit Democratic homes, it didn't hit homes of people who decided not to vote. What it became was a community issue. And what we need to make sure that we have in House District 138 is a community leader, someone who is willing to fight for everyone in this community. And so that's one of the big things that we see on the ground here, is that we want somebody who's that we need somebody who's willing to talk to the experts, regardless of who are not necessarily swayed by politics one way or the other, but people who are here to do the work, the architects, the flood mitigation experts, things of that sort, so that we can say, well, how do we best protect people and we best protect property? And so that's one of the big issues that we have here, and that's one of the main concerns that I have, and one of the main things that I'm pushing for is disaster relief, accountability from insurance companies when those disasters do hit, proper disclosures for homes and home buyers, because one of the big things that I remember helping a young family clean out their homes, gutting the bottom of the drywall, things that people had never done before, was them saying, we had no idea we were on a floodplain. We had no idea we bought a house on a floodplain. And to me, that's a huge issue. That is super huge. And I don't know what's more material than that to disclose. And so making sure we have those type of proper disclosures that we can do, so we can make sure that our community is best taken care of. I think that is one of the major issues that we see, especially in the wake of the hurricane that we have coming this week.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say the last time I was back in Houston, I drove around the old neighborhood. My parents moved into the city recently, but it's unrecognizable, and places that used to be forest area that were floodplains are now just like massive subdivisions. And I know all of those places flooded during Harvey, and I knew, you knew they were going to flood if you just looked at them. So yeah, totally understand issue. I want to get through one last question before we wrap up tonight. And, you know, so the question I've got is, knowing what you know now about running for office, what would you go back and tell your like previous self as you were getting started, with sort of like the knowledge of some hindsight?
That's a
Don't
really
be
good.
afraid of call time. That's our call time. We all know it sucks, but you better get some thick skin and you better do it, and you better do it every day and pretend like you love it, because when those reports out, that's when you're going to feel the most proud to be able to say things like, I outraised my opponent by $92,000, and that's because of call time. So that's my older self telling my younger self in 2018.
I think what I would tell is that listen to your community, listen to the voices on the ground, because what you'll get into these campaigns is you'll get a lot of experts, and I mean they have great knowledge of running politics and running campaigns and just the institution as a whole. But you know the voice of your community. You know what put you in the seat to run. You know what did that, and never lose sight of that, and never lose sight of who you're actually running for. Remember your why, and your why should be your community.
I'll kind of echo what Natali said about, you know, fundraising, and it's, you know, don't be afraid to make that ask, right? Like, I think in the beginning, you're so timid. What if they say no? And the response is, so what? So they say no. Now you have an answer and you can move on. But when someone asks me, oh, that's so exciting, what can I do to help you, right? And we're shaking hands, I hold on to it a little longer, right? So they can't go. And I say, well, can you donate? Can you host a fundraiser? You know, that's what I need. That's the help I need. And that's the one ask that I think is the hardest for candidates to make, because it's the scariest, because you're so, you know, you get caught up in this rejection. But if they say no, you're still in the same position you were before you asked them. You still have the same number of dollars in the bank. So it's not a net loss. Just keep moving. So don't be afraid to ask for those dollars when people ask you what they can do to help.
I would probably warn myself that COVID was about to happen in a few months after my primary. It was going to hit, but no, really, I would tell myself about the importance of making sure that we are, you know, continuing to organize and don't take anything for granted. It's all of those little actions together in the campaign that build winning results. So don't get discouraged when you're having a bad day. You know, it's going to be made up by a good day that's coming up. But just keep running hard, and like Akilah was saying, make sure that we are listening to our community and speak, you know, on the issues that are really affecting people. Don't shy away from them. A lot of the times pundits will tell you that certain things may not be popular, but if it's affecting your community, you need to start doing the research. You need to be knowledgeable on it, because hopefully your community is going to be able to send you to Austin to find them solutions. So they need you to be ready, regardless of if the political winds are ready for it.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much for all of you for being on. Thank you so much, Natali, Akilah, Lorenzo, Elizabeth, for being on. Thank you for Emmy Ruiz, who is a friend and a hero, for being on this. This was a real honor, and it was really amazing to get to hear from all of y'all tonight. I'd be remiss if I didn't, as our lovely candidates mentioned, if you do want to make contributions and help folks in Texas and Pennsylvania get elected, run for something this year, started a fund called the RFSSM Fund, where we fund folks in Texas and Pennsylvania. I am dropping the Act Blue link in to the chat. We're also going to share out with everybody links to get involved with all of the campaigns from all of the candidates on. You should be getting an email about that tomorrow. So if you want to get involved, don't worry, you're going to have the chance. We'll have volunteer links, we'll have donation links, and we'll also make sure folks are able to follow you on social media. So with that, I just want to say thank you again for everyone. This is so fun. It was a real honor to get to be on the phone with y'all and get to talk about our home state. It was quite lovely.